I never thought I'd be talking about a game like Atlas again. To be honest, for a while there I had a really bad love-hate relationship with that game. It suffered from so many issues during its launch, but for some reason, I just couldn't stop playing it. I think a lot of it has to do with the groups that I was a part of. People always say that nothing makes a good sandbox like having a good clan to go along with it. And for this one, that was hands down the majority of the enjoyment. Now today's topic is going to of course include Atlas, but it's also going to include Amazon's new world. We'll get to the reason why in a second, but I'd like to start off by saying that Atlas to some degree does seem to be doing well for itself. Because I remember when it first launched and it quickly jumped down to mostly negative, and it without a shadow of a doubt did deserve it at the time. But to its credit, it did manage to crawl its way back from the abyss, and even though it's only at 41% overall reviews, which is just barely hanging on the cusp of mixed reviews, the recent reviews for the game do seem to be in the mostly positive range. And it's for this reason that I'd like to go ahead and throw up a disclaimer. Anything talked about in this video is only going to be for the launch period of Atlas and the first few months, along with the potential that it could have had, not for its current state. And for New World, we are mainly going to be talking about current information alongside information from the alpha that has been publicized. I'm going to try and avoid things that players shouldn't already know about. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into it. So funnily enough, the other day I was just randomly remembering about how many people actually tuned in and logged in to play Atlas. Only a year ago, and it was a crazy amount of people on the viewership side. And honestly, it was surprising that after the day it reached its peak, despite suffering a delay and lack of communication on top of the issues themselves, it still retained a large portion of its viewership up until it actually launched. And this game, when it was first coming out, had so much media coverage. So many content creators and streamers were lining up and waiting for literal hours to jump into the servers, and had over 200,000 people tuning in on just Twitch alone, which allowed it to easily surpass Fortnite, World of Warcraft, and League of Legends in the rankings. And so the big question is there, with all that crazy amount of coverage, what went wrong to drive the game all the way down to the abyss we talked about earlier and made it to be one of the worst, if not the worst game release of 2018? I'm also saying one of the worst instead of the worst just to be safe. That was also the year that Fallout 76 came out, so I'm sure a lot of you may not remember just how good the trailer looked for Atlas, but there was in fact a really good compilation video created by a YouTuber named BLACKBIRD that showcased just how bad the situation between the trailer and the reality actually was. I'll go ahead and play a little bit of it just so you can see.
That! It's a shark, dude!
Russell.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's
Hello?
Listen, serious. Everybody in Uganda must kung fu. The movie's on. The movie's on. The movie's on. The tiger is in the cage.
Now as you can see, it's 100% safe to say that as a gamer and a viewer, the majority of people who were following Atlas right up until its launch had fell prey to what most people in the world would identify as a catfish, and many people had just ended up branding it as an Ark reskin. It was so bad to the point that several streamers actually had found a hidden single player Ark menu in the Atlas main menu just by using a controller if I remember right. But that doesn't just go for the graphics themselves, but it's also a huge representation of everything else. The gameplay, the mechanics, literally everything. For a good example, I was actually one of the many people who suffered from the endless rubber banding while trying to leave the starting zone. Not even kidding, but I probably spent about 2 or 3 hours just trying to make it from the port that you spawn in all the way to the next map over. And if the game had been running like normal, this might have taken about 10 minutes or less to do so once I got my boat. If you avoided trying Atlas for the longest time until recently, you might ask, how could something like that possibly happen? Well, essentially what Wildcard wanted to do with the game is use something called a grid system for its servers. Basically, they wanted to house 40,000 players per mega server in the form of these grids, and once a grid got close to being full, you would no longer be able to enter it unless it went down to a certain amount. And the majority of these grids could only house about 100 to 200 players max. And if you're starting to see where the problem arised when it came to the Atlas launch, you are absolutely right on the money. So all of us flood the servers at the same time, and as you can see on the map, there was only certain starting zones you could spawn in. This began an age of lag and desync that I don't think the majority of players had encountered before. So overall, Atlas failed, and pretty hard when it comes to the official servers. We can't get into each and every detail about what went wrong with the game, but hopefully that does give a general idea of what happened just on the graphics, basic gameplay, and server side alone. But the reason I wanted to go into this is because now we have an official release date for none other than Amazon's very own New World. Now, I won't say that everyone is collectively extremely excited for New World right now, because there are in fact some concerns in the community, primarily on the open world PvP sandbox side. But to quickly touch on that, I have read some of your comments on the previous video that I had made related to PvP, and I do agree and think that honestly there are different ways that they could implement PvP into the game so that everybody can have satisfaction from it, and that there are also people that don't want anything to do with it, and for very good reason. I think after reading through all the different options and opinions that honestly, if Amazon is looking for feedback on the PvP aspect, or they already are planning to do this, I think it might be best for them to put in both PvP and PvE servers, like World of Warcraft. That way the game will easily cater to both parties, and there won't be nearly as much divide for the players that want the game to be majorly based on one or either aspect. The way the game is shaping up to be when it comes to the corruption mechanics and the monsters that will attack our settlements sounds really cool, and I think it's a great way to start making sure the game has enough player versus environment content to keep the players occupied. Now, one thing to know about New World is that, like Atlas, it too wanted to house servers that could fit thousands of players. At one point during the alpha, they were publicly said to be aiming for about 10,000, but now if you take a look at their website, it now says over 1,000. This is the part where Atlas had ultimately failed, and I think New World may succeed. Instead of shooting for the stars right off the bat and trying to go for the maximum load possible, it seems that the developers of New World know to a certain degree how much the servers can handle. And the alpha did play a big part in why I think and hope the servers for New World will work out a lot better in this regard. And ultimately, the game is being developed by Amazon Game Studios. In terms of promotion, it has great potential of reaching those very same numbers that Atlas had reached, and possibly even surpass them. And a little purple platform for streaming, of course, as you know, is owned by Amazon, so it would stand to reason that they will probably do everything possible they can to promote the game and plaster it all over that website. And since they are going straight for the Steam platform alongside having their own Amazon game launcher, it seems like they're going to have a really big amount of reach. And New World has already begun showing really healthy game habits aside from responding to the PvP concerns, but they have been showcasing small updates to the community on Twitter a few times a week since it's been announced. We've already got the first developer diary as well, which showcases an introduction into New World's continent called the Turnum, and they actually plan on continuing these developer diaries on a monthly basis, which would be really cool to see. Stuff like that is really going to help for the long run for the success of the game, and I can only hope they will continue to expand on that even more into methods like developer live streams and roadmaps for the game. And the fact that some of us have already played the alpha is a great thing as well. It feels like there's been so much time since the original alpha has gone down, and that version had already felt like an extremely polished alpha. And I can tell you firsthand, when you look at other games that are like, or actually in the sandbox genre that jump into the alpha state, and then you look at New World, it's a night and day difference. That's another reason I'm really excited to see what they've changed and added into the game. And of course, that doesn't excuse it from having the possibility of failure. All games have that possibility, and it's always best to keep your guard up to avoid extreme disappointment. And I just hope that for New World, that we can get a really good release in addition to the sandbox genre. It feels like it's been so long since we played the good ones. And if this game is going to help usher in the next generation of those types of games, then there may be some hope for us yet. But be sure to stay tuned in on this one, folks. I feel fairly confident in saying that Papa Amazon is probably getting ready to make some major moves for this title in 2020. And on top of that, we'll also have to wait and see what happens with their new iteration of Lord of the Rings MMO, since both of these titles will be made in the same studio. Keep in mind as well that for New World, there will be an alpha before the beta test is what they were saying. And I think that Amazon knows that for the past 5 to 6 years, we've been in a really tough spot, with not just massive multiplayer games, but also theme park MMORPGs as well. And it looks like some of these titan companies are finally on their way to bring their slice of creation to the market, but we can only hope that they're ready for it. This market in particular is without a doubt one of the hungriest gaming markets that we'll see for a little while.